Well, needless to say, we're really excited that Stephen's here today with us and he's going to talk about his plans and his platform. I think a lot of us have known Stephen for a while and um, got to share his different positions and as an elected official. And um, so just to say, he's a Hickman High School graduate. That's probably really important to a lot of people here. And I just lost my little blurb about him. He's it's not turning up on my brand new cell phone here. Okay, this is frustrating. Okay, well, Stephen was former chair of the Democratic Party, and he can fill us in on the years for that since my blurb isn't coming up on my phone. And he also was a state representative, I believe, for 2 terms. And I think he was my representative. um, he also has a law degree from the University of Missouri Law School, though undergraduate, he went to St. Louis University. He also served 2 tours of duty in Iraq as a Marine. I think I'm just going to let Stephen talk and not share more bio stuff because we're all real excited he's here. Thanks for being here, Stephen.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. And just want to know what time you want to wrap up my be talking.
You can talk for 10, 20, 30 minutes, and then typically we always have lots of questions, Stephen. So, and that goes till
at Muleskinners?
Yeah. What? Yeah, so it goes till 1, and then we have announcements.
Okay, I appreciate it. So first off, thank you all very much for having me. I've known some of you, I mean, Alice since I was probably 8, I think, when my younger brother and Dove played soccer together when they were 5. Herb, I know you've known me since I was probably 3 or 4. And so it's great to be back. And some of you, a few folks here I've met, so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about myself and about my campaign. What I really want to do, just kind of lay out some of my background. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been doing the last few years, because I haven't spoken to Muleskinners for 5 or 6 years, which is probably the longest I've gone since I was 17 years old to speaking to Muleskinners. And then talk a little bit about the Senate map in general and my campaign and what the issues I want to work on. So my history with Muleskinners, this is kind of interesting doing it on Zoom. I started coming to Muleskinners probably in the late 90s. When I was a high school kid, I would come over Christmas break, because obviously, lunch hour. So when I had a couple weeks off of Christmas, and in the summers I would come and I would go to, it was at Boone Tavern when I started down in the basement there. And I think the first time I spoke to Muleskinners was after I came back from Boys State. So it would have been the summer before I went into my senior year of high school. So it was 23 years ago. I think was the first time I was a speaker at Muleskinners. And obviously we've gone through the Tiger Hotel and Stevens College and the Country Club. And so I think this is the 5th location I've talked to the Muleskinners Club over the last 20 years or so. So I really appreciate it. My background, which Alice touched on, I grew up here in Columbia. I started going to Grant Elementary School and then was at Ridgeway for a while. I was one of the first class that opened Smith and Middle School, and then was at West Junior and then Hickman High School. So all the way through here with Columbia Public Schools, which is like a really important thing, because the Columbia Public Schools is one of the main reasons that I want to run for state senate, is to protect something that I think was so valuable and such an important part of my life. It's been really cool. And I would say one of the things that when I was making the decision to run, one of the things that really spurred it was seeing that some of my high school peers are in leadership positions at the Columbia Public Schools. So Mary Groupie, who's the president at Hickman, she and I went to Japan together in a high school exchange for Mato City, our sister city of Mato City, in 7th grade. Is when I met her, and she's now the principal at Hickman. And Adam Taylor, who's the principal at Battle, he and I played soccer together for years, and our lockers were next to each other in high school at West Junior. And so seeing folks from my generation take sort of a leadership position in an institution that has been so important to me is a lot of the motivation for why I want to do my part and why I want to try to help defend something that's been so important. So after graduating from SLU, as Alice said, I was in the Marine Corps, and I think folks know I was in Iraq a couple times. I came back. I worked for Claire McCaskill in D.C. For a short period of time, and then ran for the state house. And I actually did 4 terms in the state house. So I was in the state house from 2008, representing the city of Columbia, from 2008 to 2016. And then, as folks probably remember, I ran in 2016 and lost to Caleb Brown 51-49. One of the important things to note about this race is the district lines have changed. So in 2016, when I was running, it was Boone and Cooper County, and I won Boone and I lost Cooper, and I lost Cooper by more than I won Boone. And with redistricting, it's now for the first time just Boone County. So exciting for Boone County Democrats to have a Senate seat that is solely Boone County and not paired with another mid-Missouri county, like it's been for, I guess, really all of history. So sort of picking up the story where I think folks may not know, I think most of you know all of that stuff. So after I lost in 2016, some folks suggested that I be the chair of the Missouri Democratic Party. And my initial reaction was absolutely not. I don't want that job. There's no way I'm doing that. And then Claire McCaskill called me. And she's got a way of being very persuasive. And she said, "Hey, I'm running for re-election to the Senate. I need you to be chair of the party." And I was like, "Okay, well, yes, I'll do it." So I took on the job of being chair of the Missouri Democratic Party, which was, I said, not a job that I had ever set out to do. I wanted to be a state senator. And it was a difficult time to be chair of the party. There had been a lot of fighting. Obviously, the 2016 primary was still very, very fresh. People were, all of us were shocked that Donald Trump had won. And there was a genuine and justified panic, I think, around all the state about what was coming and what was going to happen. And, I think most of our fears were realized. I think they were well, well-grounded fears, unfortunately. And when I took over the party, the party in Missouri hadn't done much. And that's not a knock on the party. That's just the role that had been asked to play. We had Democratic governors for all but the 4 years that Matt Blunt was governor. We had Democratic governors for 20 of 24 years. And when you have a governor, they kind of take over that role of leader of the party. What they say kind of gives direction to things. And so I was kind of taking over a role that hadn't been filled for a while. The only statewides we had at the time were McCaskill and Galloway. We had lost everything else in 2016. And so my first question was, what do I want to do as chair of the party? And I knew immediately that we had to fight back. I moved the party to Columbia. Actually, we ran the party out of over by Orr Street, the Arts District, for 2 years, and we just tried to push back on every front. So one of the things I'm proud of is we recruited all 17 Senate districts. We filled all of them. We've had over 150. I can't remember the exact number. It's 151 or 153 of the 163 House districts filled. So we had candidates running all across the state. We got involved in the ballot initiatives. We endorsed and were supportive and active in the campaign to raise the minimum wage, the campaign to pass Clean Missouri, which we know the history of that, but it did pass at the time. And then to push back on right to work and to defeat right to work. So at the end of the cycle, we had passed 3 good ballot initiatives. We had picked up a state Senate seat in Clay County, Lauren Arthur's district, which we had won in a special. We had lost 3 rural House Democrats, which we knew we were going to lose. We had picked up 3 other suburban ones. Nicole Galloway had been reelected as auditor. And so it was really crushing to lose Claire's race. In retrospect, 6 points in Missouri was probably, pretty good, and we should probably have been proud about that. But it was still a horrible thing. And so I was pretty exhausted at the end of that process. And it didn't feel as victorious of a cycle at the time as it probably, looking back on was. So anyway, after that, I was hired by AFSCME, which is the Public Employees Union. I was hired by the International, so it was headquartered in DC. And I worked there for 6 months, and I traveled around the country. I did a legislative session in California, which was incredible to see Democratic supermajorities. I tell a story about my first day there. I walked into the speaker's office, and they like welcomed me, and they're like, "Hey, if you ever need anything, come find us." And I had served in the House for 8 years, and I think I've in Missouri, and I think I've been in the speaker's office twice, both times to get yelled at. So it was just such a vastly different environment. Then I went to after session was over, I went to Richmond, to Virginia. So Virginia has their elections off cycle. So this was 2019. And I ran field programs in Virginia when we were trying to pick up, and we successfully picked up the Democratic majority for the first time and got a Democratic trifecta. So I lived in a hotel in Richmond for like 2 months and ran field programs for Senator Hashmi, who was flipping a Senate seat outside of Richmond. And that was really cool to be there in a room the night that the Democrats flipped the legislature. And it was, yeah, it was a very cool experience to get a glimpse of that. But it also was clear to me that as fun as that was, victories are more meaningful at home. Like, it was cool to be there to flip the legislature. It's been really rewarding to watch Virginia for a couple of years before Youngkin won the governor's mansion. But for 2 years there was a trifecta and to pass progressive legislation. But it was still more enjoyable to flip the Clay County Senate seat here in Missouri than it was the whole Virginia legislature. And then after that, I went down to Louisiana for a little while. Worked on AFSCME sent me down there for the governor's reelect, and I ran field programs in New Orleans for a couple of weeks. During that point, the AFL-CIO in Missouri had called me and offered me a job as political director at the Missouri AFL, and it was really when I was flipping the legislature in Virginia and just realized that like life on the road was tough, and even a victory there wasn't as meaningful as a victory at home, that I decided to come back and do that. So I was gone for about 6 months, and I came back in the fall of 2019, or right around Thanksgiving, and started the Missouri AFL-CIO. And I've been working there as a political director for a little over 3 years now. So with the AFL-CIO, our job is to be the coalition, to be the hub for different labor unions. So we don't have members as terms of union members per se. All the different unions, not all of them, but a lot of the different unions belong to the AFL-CIO, and we are kind of the table that they all sit around to try to coordinate efforts and to work on different things together. And so I try to align to the best that we can the union's political work all around Missouri. And so what that's meant over the last few years is setting up and running field programs for Doug Beck's Senate race in St. Louis, and Lauren Arthur's Senate race in Kansas City, and House races all across Missouri, some here in central Missouri. It's meant quarterbacking redistricting efforts for Democrats last cycle for the House and Senate. So it was the person coordinating all those efforts and trying to make sure we kept Democrats on the same page on those. It's meant coordinating some of our member outreach to the legislature to push back on some bad bills that we don't like, in terms of, right now, defending the initiative petition process is a major priority for us. It's getting members to run, local members to union members to run for school boards and city councils and things like that. And so it's work I really enjoy doing for a cause that I really care about. And so I think as a Missouri Democrat, if you can find work for a cause you care about and try to get some wins in the state, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Yeah, so that pretty much takes us to today. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about the whole Senate state map, and then I'll talk about my race. So we have a really unique opportunity in 2024. It's a combination of term limits and the new Senate maps that just came out. There are 6 Senate races that should be competitive in the fall of 2024. So next fall. and that's a lot. For reference, I think there's been a few years where we've had three. I would say 2020, Baker's race, Beck's race, and Lavender's race were competitive. But I can't really think of a year we've had more than three that we've played in. And so we're going to try to have six this year, which is a pretty substantial increase. The races are, and I should say, of those six, only one of those there's an incumbent. That's Doug Beck in South County, St. Louis. The other five are open seats. So that means that there's a higher probability that they'll go either way because there's not an incumbent. In those races, one of them is Doug Beck. One of them is 15, where Andrew Koenig is termed out of in Southwest St. Louis County. One of them is 23, which is where Eigel is termed out in Eastern St. Charles. So both those districts, Trudy Bush Valentine came within 2 points of winning. And so when I say there's a competitive race in St. Charles, I know people kind of are, suspicious, but we have a real chance at trying to flip that seat. It's Boone County here, the 19th. And then over in Kansas City, there's two districts that we have to hold that are competitive. And that's Lauren Arthur being termed out in Clay County in 17, and then Rizzo being termed out in Senate 11 in Eastern Jackson County. So there's six races that sort of the different unions and progressive groups and Democratic aligned groups are going to be trying to work on to flip. So this race here in Boone County, I talked a little bit about how I got into it because of the schools. I would say there's three main things that I'm talking about, and three main things that have motivated me to run. The first I'm going to call fighting extremism, and it's tough now. I mean, when I think about it, I've been doing this for 15 years, and the issues that we're fighting now are certainly more extreme than they were when I first got into politics. In 2008, if this is going to sound crazy, but Matt Blunt, one of his big things was trying to pass a health sciences corridor. He wanted to try to make health sciences from a Missouri thing, from using the University of Missouri, the vet school, the nuclear reactor, Monsanto in St. Louis, Stowers in Kansas City, and trying to make a life sciences corridor was one of his things as a Republican governor. And if you could imagine any Republican today trying to present a cohesive education-focused economic plan, like he would be laughed out of the legislature if he had even proposed such a thing today. And that was a top issue when I came in. We've seen extremism, obviously, on choice issues. It's not a surprise, but let me give you a good example. Was talking with Carly Seek, who's my campaign manager, and somebody else last week. And I was telling them about how I had talked a lot about gender pay equity in 2016, my 2016 campaign. We ran ads on gender pay equity. I had filed and pushed some legislation to try to close the pay gap. And somebody asked if that's an issue that I was going to be trying to talk a lot about in 2024. And, the honest answer is I think, unfortunately, the battle lines have moved in the wrong direction, where it's not even about trying to get pay equity. Like, obviously that's a goal, but we're trying to make sure that women don't die from the inability to access abortion care. Like the stakes and the intensity of the issue have somehow gone in the wrong direction and it's become even worse. And so when I talk about extremism, it's issues of bodily autonomy. It's issues of guns, which have gotten even crazier. It's issues of the attacks on schools, on attacking teachers, and really, threatening to strip substantial funding from schools if there's even a conversation that or an organic conversation between a teacher and a student that the legislature doesn't like. They want to take half the state money away from schools. And so there's this extremism that is incredibly dangerous and needs to be pushed back on. It needs to be confronted. It needs to be fought. And I think it should be clear for everybody that like there's not a bottom. It's not going to stop. It's not like there's certain objectives that the Republican supermajority wants to accomplish, and once they accomplish those, they'll be done. They're going to continue attacking further and further and further. And so I think combating that extremism has been a major priority and a major motivation for why I want to run for this office. The second has been defending what makes Boone County special. And it's connected in that, but there's things as we've seen the Republican supermajority consolidate their power. What they're trying to do is they're trying to run everything. So they're reaching into cities and to counties, and they're taking over decisions that local people used to have the rights and the ability to make. We saw this on the ability. Preemption laws that remove the ability of city councils to raise minimum wages. They actually cut the St. Louis minimum wage. St. Louis had a higher minimum wage than the rest of Missouri. They actually cut it down and took that ability away from them. We're seeing it in terms of local control of the St. Louis Police Department, which had been returned to the city after the Civil War, and now the legislature is trying to take back again. And I'm very concerned over the next decade that we're going to continue seeing that. Columbia, the city of Columbia passed a ban on plastic bags. You may recall the legislature came in and said, no, you can't do that. Even though the people of the city of Columbia had made that decision. And I'm very concerned over the next decade as they've accomplished so many of their other objectives that the Republican supermajority is going to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And they're going to be trying to run cities and counties from Jefferson City. So anytime there's something that they don't like, they're just going to say, you know what, we're going to change the law and you can't do that anymore. And I think that there's a real chance that if we don't stop it, even decisions about city budgets are going to be made in Jefferson City. And this is something we're seeing, all over the country. It's Republican legislatures using their gerrymandered maps to try to remove political power from anybody they disagree with. So defending what makes Boone County special, letting us make our own decisions, defending the University of Missouri, not letting funding being stripped from grants because somebody in the House wants to make a statement on the DEI language. I think there's a lot of things about making this community makes this community unique, and we should be able to chart our own path. One that doesn't have the path that our county goes shouldn't have to be co-signed by Republican supermajorities. Our local citizens should get to decide that, and that's an important thing. And then the third thing is fighting for working people, and that's just a connection from my AFL-CIO time. It's defending our public schools, making sure that there's not two tiers of education in this state. It's fighting back and making sure they don't pass right to work laws, protecting unemployment insurance, protecting work comp, things like that. And then also there's some small things that I've seen in my travels that I would like to try to do in Missouri. So let me give you an example. One of the unions has had a lot, Unite Here has had a lot of success around the country in passing laws that require hotel housekeepers to have panic buttons. So one of the big problems is you've got mostly women who don't have a lot of political power walking into hotel rooms, and there's a really high rate of sexual assault on these workers. And so they've done efforts in other states to try to mandate that these women have panic buttons that they can push as part of their employment. So if you're going to have somebody clean hotel rooms and they're going to be walking into these vulnerable situations, that they have some ability to immediately call for help. That's the kind of thing that as a state senator I want to try to accomplish. I understand that it's going to be a Republican majority for, hopefully not super majority, but majority for the next few years. I don't anticipate being able to pass sweeping labor law reform that I would probably personally like to see, things like the PRO Act at a state level. But I think that there's things like that can actually help people that I'd like to try to use a senator's leverage to try to accomplish and to make things better. So that's a tangible example of what I'm working on. And so I think kind of that covers a lot of where I've been for the last few years, what the state looks like. Oh, I should say one other thing that's going to be opening in 24 that I've been trying to be a part of is making sure that we have a positive ballot initiative on the ballot for voters to vote on, some sort of economic justice. So I've been sort of involved in helping get that off the ground, and I think there will be at least one good ballot initiative that people can vote for in 2024. We're going to do something on the minimum wage and earned sick time, and so that's another project that I've been working on that I think will be helpful. So from there, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, so now we are ready for questions. Feel free to raise your hands, or if you would prefer, you can post it in the chat and I'll be happy to read it out for you. Herb, I see your hand first. Make sure you unmute yourself. I think you're headed for it.
Unaccustomed as I am to asking questions in this context. Steve, permit me for a very short compliment, followed by a very short question. Steve, I have known you for a very long time, and I'm not sure that I detected it when you were 4, I think when you first came here, but I was sure obvious by high school that you had embraced, if not from DNA, then through your soul, an abiding commitment to serve, including through elective office if opportunity arose. Many other good people in this world who serve also shy from the last, and I thank you for doing what you've done all these years already. And unlike me, you got a ways to go. What I would like to have you speak to is for this group particularly. I think that we are all your strong supporters. And we might like to know if there were things special beyond the obvious that we can do that would be beneficial to your success in this, what I think is a winnable race.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Herb. I don't, life kind of happens and unfolds. So I'm turning 40 this in a little more than a month. And I don't know when it is, but at some point you realize that something you're doing is your life's work. And for me, Missouri Democratic politics is my life's work. That's what I'm, it's really, I mean, it's kind of sappy to say, but when I was growing up as a kid, like being a Boone County Democrat was like what I wanted to do. And, I walked into Muleskinners not knowing anybody as a 15-year-old because I wanted to be a part of that so badly. And so this is, I hope that if I'm elected, I'll be 50 when I'm term limited out, and that'll be a huge chunk of my life is spent on fighting in democratic politics and trying to help our community that way. So I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the support that so many of you have given me encouragement since I was a little kid. I think really just talking to people in the community. So I'm sure I'll be back on Muleskinners again at some point in the next 20 months or whatever is to the election. I think letting people in the community know that it's a winnable race, and that it's when we have to win, and that you think I can do it, and that it matters. I think the things in Missouri that people struggle with are a feeling of helplessness, right? A feeling of like, even if we show up, like what's going to change, what's going to be different. And I think we have to fight that it's not complacency, because complacency is like, oh, things are like, it's not that. It's like more of a dread of like, well, like, even if we show up, even if we do this, things are still going to go in the wrong direction. And I think people need to know that that there are some positive things that we can accomplish, and that building back is a long, slow process, but it needs to start here. If we can't win places like Boone County, we have no chance of ever winning in Missouri ever again, right? We have to win in Boone County. And so I think talking to people in the community about the campaign and just about the fact that like this can be the start of of us rebuilding, or not even the start, but this can be an important step in us rebuilding. I was really, somebody made the analogy the other day of taking different hills. And, for the state and for Boone County in particular, last cycle, the hill was House seats, right? Like that was the hill. Like we had a new map, and people ran really good campaigns, and we won 4 of the 5 House seats in Boone County. Right. For a while there, we had two. When I first came in, there was 3, and then for a while, I think there was 4, and then it was down to 2. And for us to take that hill was really important. This is the next hill that we have to take. We've won all the countywide offices, and this is the next hill we have to take. And I think letting people in the community know that and helping fight that complacency is really important.
Looks like Alice has got her hand up, and then I'll go to Carol's question in the
I was going to ask you to touch back. You said it on those other Senate campaigns around the state, because I do remember Kip talking. By the way, we'll have a Democratic picnic where you can talk again in June. I think it's June 11th. Kip saying Boone County could be the only Senate seat we might take in the next election round, and I just remembered that because that was not good news, because we need more seats. Maybe you could touch on those campaigns again and what they thought the possibilities were, and if any of them are like just their county or etc.
Yeah. So first off, you guys are going to be sick of hearing me by November 24. Yeah. So I think of those 6, I think holding Doug Beck. So he's in Senate District 1, which is South County. That's the district that Scott Sifton had won 2 terms before that. So we have to hold that one. That's the only incumbent. I think the most Democratic of all the seats I've talked about is the 19th here in Boone County. So if you were to ask people, which of all these races are you most confident in an outcome, I think they would say they're most confident in a Dem winning Boone County. And so when Kip says this might be the only one, like that's absolutely true. Like this might be the only pickup we have. It's my goal, both as a AFL-CIO political director and also just as a candidate and as a Missouri Democrat, that it's not the only pickup. And I also say, like, I don't take anything for granted. I see people all the time saying, "Oh, Dem's going to win Boone County." I remember Ed Robb winning a county commission race here. I remember Roy Blunt winning Boone County. I remember George W. Bush winning Boone County the second time. So I don't take any of that for granted. And anybody who thinks, like, says that, they can say that, that's fine. That's not how I feel. And I don't want anybody to think that's happening, because I have seen it around here before. And I don't know. But most people would say that of all those, the most likely outcome is a Dem wins in Boone County. The next one is Clay County, 17. Lauren Arthur is term limited out there. She won in a special, and so she only got 6 years in the Senate rather than 8, which is a real disappointment because she's a great senator. But there is a Democratic candidate running there, Maggie Nurnburn. Maggie is currently in the House, and she's an NEA teacher. So just excited about that. I think that's a great thing. It would be great to have her in the Senate. She announced shortly after I did, and she and I have been working together on some stuff. And that one is going to be, it's Clay County. It's the southern part of Clay County. So Liberty is in a different district, but it's the southern part of Clay County. It's one that Republicans held before Lauren won it. So Ryan Silvey was a senator before Lauren. So we had it for 6 years, but it's not in any way a cakewalk or a gimme. And that race is going to be very competitive. I expect Maggie to win, but that will be a tough one. And then the 2 open seats in St. Louis, so 15, Andrew Koenig is term limited out. Andrew's it carried some of the worst legislation, a lot of the anti-school stuff he's carried. And so one thing I want to emphasize, like, these aren't like knocking off Republican moderates. These are like taking districts where, like, nut job, like Koenig and Bill Eigel have been representing. that district, Trudy Bush Valentine, I think got 49%. And so it's definitely winnable. We tried, you know, the lines have changed, obviously. We tried very hard to help Deb Lavender, and she lost last time. So it's again, not in any way a gimme, but it's a possibility. There's no candidate that is announced there on the Dem side. There is going to be at least a two-way, if not a three-way Republican primary with well-funded Republican candidates. So there will be a pretty brutal primary on the Republican side. And then 23, the eastern half of St. Charles. So Bill Eigel, who's been the leader of the nut jobs, like he's been one of the worst. He's the one that told trans families they should leave Missouri. You know, like he just literally said, "Good." He's like, "I hope you leave." That's what his quote was. He is term limited out. I think he's running for governor. So take that for what you will. But that is it's a very high union density district. There's a lot of union members that have moved west. It's becoming more democratic because more people of color are moving into St. Charles from St. Louis. And so that district is trending democratic. Oh, I should go back and say 15. That's the hardest Democratic trending district in Missouri is 15 of Southwest St. Louis County. So Obama got 38% there in 2012, and then Trudy Bush Valentine got 49% a few years later. So it is trending Democratic hard, and it's mainly because of abortion and guns, and it's a lot of yeah. I mean, it's a district that we have a good chance on. Eastern half of St. Charles is also trending Democratic. And so there's some union members that people are talking to that are close to getting in that race, but nobody on the Democratic side has gotten in yet. There is a Republican primary in 23 as well. So both 15 and 23 are districts that Republicans view as more safe because they've had them for so long. And so there's going to be brutal primaries, but there's real opportunities for us. And then the last one is back over in Kansas City, Eastern Jackson County, Senate District 11. So JJ Rizzo has represented that for a while. That has been a more conservative Democratic seat for a long time. Under redistricting, it did not actually go very well for us, so it became more difficult. And so that of the six is one of the most challenging, even though it's a Democratic hold. It's certainly winnable. We absolutely can win it. We have to pick up a total of 2 seats to break the super minority. And we have an opportunity to pick up as many as 3. So that's the goal. But, you know, a difference between, I mean, look, for us in Boone County, if we win the Boone County Senate seat, that's an accomplishment, and that's a good night. Something that, you know, we've all been working on for a long, long time. For Missouri Democrats to have what is considered a good night, like we have to do more than just win the Boone County Senate seat. We have to win some of these other ones too in 24. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love that you can just dig in and explain all of that in such an informed way, in a way that's easy to understand. That's really great. That you just got that knowledge right there.
I'm unfortunately obsessed with this, and this has been kind of the I don't know, it's been my dream to pick up Senate seats across Missouri for a long time.
You know, not just your race, but the whole state. That's really refreshing.
Well, it is important because, Sarah, as you know, like because you saw it in 2020, and I saw it in 2016, is when we don't compete in a lot of these places, the Republicans have the ability to dump millions of dollars and to basically, you know, just pound the Democrat into the ground here. And if you were to say, how do we lose? If you were to lay out a formula for what needs to happen for us to lose in Boone County in 2024, part of it would be, a huge part of it would be, Democrats don't field candidates in any of the other districts that I've talked about, or those candidates never become viable, and they spend $3 million here in Boone County.
Just hammering you over and over. Yeah.
You know, I've gone through before that. In 2016, one of the things that I'm fixated on this is because in 2016, we did not compete in a lot of these places, and we just let them go, and they spent $2.5 million. You know, and so like that's a hard thing to overcome.
Yeah. Amen. So Dave Mallory had a good follow-up, but you answered it about how many of the 6 would we need to pick up to drop from a super majority to simply majority status for Republicans. And you said 2 or even better 3.
So we have to net 2. So for example, if we lose 11 in
Right.
Rizzo's seat and we pick up Boone, then we're even. That's
Right.
again, congrats to us and Boone. Like, we'll all be excited, but like,
We really need 2 more.
statewide, it hasn't moved the ball at all. We have to pick up 2, and we have the theoretical opportunity to add 3 if we can hold 1, 17, and 11.
Great. Carol posted this question a while back in the chat. Her question is, what can you and the Democratic Party do to convince working class voters that the current Republican agenda is not helping them? That's a great question.
That's a great question. And there's not one answer to it. So part of it as a labor person, one of the things that I've really we try to do is specifically do labor to labor, door to door programs, so we can talk directly with union members and talk to them about, hey, like, this is what is going on. I should put in a plug here, and actually this is an important thing. So there's right after this, I'm going to be going to it. If you're free this afternoon, there's a rally at 2:00 at City Hall for some laborers workers. They work at Wildcat Materials east of town, and they're on strike. And showing up for that, I hear this griping all the time in labor that, well, there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But people say it. And so always providing examples. And like, I can give you, like, if you walk into a UAW hall, they're furious about NAFTA still. They think the Dems screwed them on NAFTA. And those, the auto workers, the old timers that were around then are just livid about it. And there is a feeling for a lot of working people that Dems campaign on their issues, and when it comes time to deliver, they don't actually do it. I think there's half truth in that. I can give you, there's great examples of things that Dems have done. And so I think it's dishonest to dismiss that and say that we're the same, because that's just objectively not correct. But there are other things, like, for example, okay, I'll give you the perfect example. Those striking workers right now at Wildcat Materials, their company has posted a job thing to replace them. And on the thing, it literally says, this is a permanent job to replace striking workers. It says that, and people text me and they say, hey, that's got to be illegal. No, they can do that. There is a bill, the PRO Act, which passed out of the House, which Joe Biden, this is when the Democrats had the trifecta, Joe Biden has said he would sign. There was 47 Democratic senators that were co-sponsoring it. And they would never bring it to the floor and the vote in the Senate because of the filibuster rules, right? And one of the things in the PRO Act would have prohibited exactly what Wildcat Materials is doing. It would have prohibited permanently replacing striking workers. And so those workers are literally watching other people take their jobs. And there was a fix for it that a Democratic trifecta House Senate president was unable to pass, that right now directly impacts their lives. And so you can say all the things about, hey, it came out of the House, the president wanted it. At the end of the day, it didn't get done. And so for them sitting there right now, they think, man, there was a thing that could have been done to help me and it wasn't done. And so that's a long answer to your question. I think it's important for us to show up and be visible and be vocal on issues that affect working people. And then when Dems do have an opportunity, it's important to deliver. That's why I was so excited to see Michigan when they repealed right to work and they reinstated prevailing wage. That was awesome. When I was when I was in Virginia, the Democrats didn't do that. They didn't repeal prevailing right to work. And there's a lot of frustration among labor unions that they didn't. And so watching Governor Whitmer do it in Michigan was like, yes, they got the trifecta and they used their power. And I think it's the sum of hundreds of actions like that that ultimately will help bring that back to where it should be.
Yep. Carly helpfully posted a link to the Facebook event for today's rally after this. If you want more information, you can click on that over in the chat. Let's go to the scholars who have a question. And then I do see that there's 2 more in the chat. So I'll come back to you after this.
This is Mari. I'm the one with the question. Like Herb, I applaud your career of public service. But to play the devil's advocate, that I have seen that used against people in other campaigns. Oh, he's just a career politician, blah, blah, blah. So I'm wondering if you're anticipating that sort of pushback from opposition, and if so, how you plan to respond to it.
Yeah, I remember watching Claire in a town hall in St. Louis in 2018 saying, you know, the fact that they're going to use the fact that I've dedicated my life to this against me. And that's true. I mean, like that's definitely become a line of attack. You know, certainly more in recent years. It's probably always been there. I think, I don't know what they're going to say about me. I mean, like, I didn't, you know, think that they would say some of the things they said last time. I think that they'll find whatever they think is the worst, and they'll use that line. You know, one of the things that they're good at, or I don't know if good is the right word, but they find, you know, any connection or thread to anything you've ever done or anything that the AFL-CIO has ever done, and then they're going to try to tie that to the worst thing. So I don't speculate on what attacks they're going to make on me, because they're going to just say whatever they say. I think we overcome that. I overcome that just by the number of people that I've helped over the years, and the knowledge and the dedication. And I think that, you know, like, you're obviously not a representative sample of Boone County, because you're all super involved. But this is also a community that's small enough where a lot of people know people individually and know that it's that I'm committed to this. And, you know, I think Randy Minshew has halfway gotten in the race. I don't know if he's fully in the race. And I think one distinction is, you know, he's run, this will be his fourth time, I guess, and for his third different office. And I think I've been pretty consistent on hammering away on, like, the issues that are important to me and that I'm going to fight for. And I don't think anybody thinks I'm a ladder climber, right? Like, I don't think anybody thinks that I'm just doing this to be like, this is the thing I want to do. And I think it's been pretty clear to everybody. And this is the way I want to help. And I think that's been clear to everybody. So they may say that and they may do that. But I think we can overcome it just by partly through experience and partly through hard work and sincerity.
Great. I think you kind of answered this, but Dave Taylor wanted to know if there were any other announced candidates from either party for this seat. And Randy Minshew has been making noise, and he actually did file paperwork, right?
So yeah, he filed paperwork. He's created a committee,
right?
And then they asked him about it. He said he's still deciding, but he wanted to put something down on paper, which not sure what that means.
You do you, buddy.
Yeah. You know, if he runs, I think that there's you know, he's got a record, and we're going to make him stand next to it. And I think there's pretty clear differences. I don't think anybody in Columbia would be confused and think that, oh man, there are two guys are the same. I think there's pretty clear differences between us. And so I think people have a clear choice, and that's good. And I'm confident in the choice that Boone County voters will make.
Great, thanks. Let's see. And then the Mallorys ask, there is an active PAC, the House Democrat Campaign Caucus, or HDCC, that helps work toward electing Dems to the Mo House. Is there an equivalent PAC for the Mo Senate? Great question.
Yeah,
something
so
like
there's
HDCC.
Yeah, there is. There's something called Majority Forward. I'm not going to speak about this year. I'll be diplomatic. I think that over the since 2008, the last 12 years, I don't think that PAC has done all it can to elect Democrats. And I think there are races that we have left on the table. And when I say there's races left on the table, that means that there's fewer Democratic senators which means that it's harder for us to stop bad legislation, which means that people in Missouri's lives are worse. Again, over the last 12 years, because that has not been given the attention with the energy that it needs to be. And in 2016, everybody knew that if I had been successful, that I was going to try to run that program and try to help elect other Democrats around the state. And then obviously, you know, I wasn't, and it didn't. So there is a PAC like that. I'm hopeful that they will step up this year and things will go well. And I'm not, this is not me calling out any one individual. I'm saying over literally more than a decade. I don't think it has operated as effectively as it should have. It is different than the House PAC in the sense that on the House side, there's so many more candidates that candidate recruitment, candidate training is a bigger deal. And on the Senate side, it's mostly, I mean, the PAC is mainly spends money on TV and putting money into races. And so there is one. I think that over the last few cycles, what it has done has been a TV PAC for 1 or 2 Senate races. And I think it could do more than that. I'm hopeful again that this cycle it will do more than that.
Great answer. And not great answer, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the fact that we had to ask, does this thing even exist, kind of tells you how active they've been here, at least on the ground.
Yeah.
Herb, did you want to come back and ask another question or make another comment?
Thank you earlier for emphasizing the importance of optimism in this election year. You had a fundraiser event in March at Shakespeare South. I struggled in on trekking poles because I just had a full hip replacement. The place was packed, and it was the most enthusiastic, the most optimistic, darn near the most rowdy gathering for a Senate election that I have seen in decades. We have the base if we resist old folks' grumpiness and share our positive expectations. I think you're right. That will make the difference in turnout.
And I appreciate you reminding me of that because, you know, like all of us, I've had a cynical last few years. And so it's easy to become cynical, and we have to remind ourselves of that. I've said a long time, we have to make sure we give people wins, right? Like we have to keep people engaged and celebrate the wins. And that's why when the city of Columbia or when Boone County does something, you know, good, it's important that we celebrate it because we're not getting, you know, the wins at the statewide level. You know, reestablishing funding for libraries back to baseline is like you know, it's like that's a win for us, but like that, it's hard to get people excited about, hey, we've got back to baseline. So thank you for saying that, because that's an important reminder to me too, that we have to, you know, it's the coolest event I've ever seen in Columbia was Barack Obama, 2008, 6 days before the election. He was here down on campus. And I mean, for anybody that was there, it was a once in a lifetime Columbia event. And it was it was about optimism and hope and the feeling that we could get things done. And so for engaging students and stuff like that, that's really true. And so thank you for saying that and reminding me of it. And by the way, I was really, really moved. You know, I got into this, I was 24 in my first campaign, and to some degree, like I didn't appreciate exactly what that means when all your neighbors come out and people come out the same way I do now. So I was really, really moved by that. And it was cool. I was, you know, when you get in a race, you don't know what's going to happen. And for all the people to show up like that was really cool.
Yeah. Dave Taylor commented in the chat, we also need stronger coattails. We especially need a great candidate to run for U.S. Senate against Hawley to turn out a lot of voters.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, like the Holly race, I think is going to drive a lot of stuff here. Obviously, there'll be a governor's race as well, and I think that there'll be a Democrat getting in that relatively soon.
That's good.
But let me say two things. One, that there's no way to overcome or to duplicate the powerful effect of top of the ticket driving out voters, right? Like that. Like, look, there's Mizzou students are going to come out because just like Josh Hawley, more than they're going to come out because I'm running for state senate and we've got a full slate of county offices. Like I get that, I understand that, so it's important that we have that. That being said, one of the things that I think is important in Boone County going in 2024 is not expecting anybody else to take care of stuff for us, right? Not trusting that the party's going to run any coordinated, that there's going to be any sort of massive fundraising effort or organization effort or voter registration effort or student voter effort from anybody else. It would be awesome if it happens. We can't replicate it, but making plans with the expectation that we're going to be on our own to turn out student voters. How are we going to do that? We're going to be on our own to drive, to GOTV, to knock doors in the summer of 24. One of the challenges, just to be, I'm telling you, I don't know, maybe it's more information than people want, but one of the major differences between Claire's race and Kander and Koster's race. So Kander's race in 2016, people don't recall, he was only a national candidate for like 6 weeks. Like it was really September to November that money poured into Missouri, and he had spent more than a year just trying to stay viable. And it really wasn't until Florida and Ohio Senate races collapsed, all this money came in. And so what happened was, when the money comes in at the end, there's certain things you can do with it and there's certain things you can't do with it. So he bought a ton of television. He couldn't build a field program because in September, you can't build a field program the same way. Claire's race in 2018 was different because Claire knew she was going to be fully funded the entire time. And so the field program that she built, because she started more than a year ahead of time, was substantially bigger than the 2016 field program. Just because there was more resources and she didn't have to worry about running out of money at the end because she knew it was going to be there. Missouri races going forward are going to look more like the 2016 race than the 2018 race. We are not going to be in a situation for the next few years where we can say, oh, we know for a fact this race is going to have a ton of money at the end, and therefore we can build out a huge field program. And so what that means is in Boone County, we're going to have to put more attention and energy into that ourselves, because we know for a fact that we'll have money locally in Boone County. So we can build that in Boone County. The rest of the state's not going to be able to build it the same way, but we're going to have to do it. That was a long answer. Sorry. No,
and that, just being on the campaign staff side, and I know Carly would agree with me. She's been around long enough that has been the experience. Like, don't wait for help because it's not coming.
Right.
Like if you want to do something, and like we just awarded Dustin Bax the Young Democrat of the Year because he was the person who stepped up in the last cycle. It wasn't his job, but he ended up being kind of a de facto campaign coordinated campaign person just because he was there a lot and Trudy was funding him handsomely. And he's like, look, bring me all your materials. I'll coordinate it. We'll take everybody's stuff every door we go to. And that's what it's going to take. I think you're right.
Yeah. And so what's
as a team
likely to happen, or hopefully will happen in the Holly race, is that whether it's Lucas or somebody else or whoever, but the people aren't going to decide till the very end that that's a winnable race. And they'll pour, when they do, they'll just throw so much money at it, it'll be ridiculous. But we're not going to have any of that certainly not in May or June or July. And so all the time when you're hiring canvassers and you're putting together a field plan, we're going to have to do it under the expectation that there's not going to be this money coming in. If it does come in, awesome. But we can't be like, oh, it'll show up and be left holding the bag.
All right. Am I overlooking any other questions? I think I've kept up with the chat, but I am willing to admit a mistake if somebody else notices one that I've missed. Pam, what would you like to ask?
I just want to know when you're going to have your website open up.
Oh, yeah. Very soon. Hopefully this week.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the other differences in this campaign for me was I was a state rep when I ran last time. And so I already had like, money in the bank, and I had a website, and I could just roll everything over. And this time starting from scratch has just been a different process.
Sure.
So I think we've got it's up and password protected. And I think it should be open to the public in the next few days.
Okay, well, let us know.
Okay, I will. All right, y'all. I appreciate everything you do. I appreciate you sticking with democratic politics for as long as so many people have. And thank you very much for giving me the time. I enjoyed it.
Great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks so much for joining us. This has been really interesting, and yeah, just hearing that we are able to maybe pick up some seats around the state if we do the work. That's great, great news. And I'm
Absolutely.
feeling like the last cycle here in Boone County, the county cycle in April, we had a great night as Democrats. I felt like it was a really good night.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, I'm like finally feeling like there's some energy, there's some energy. Let's keep it rolling. I'm starting to feel that hope again in a way I haven't since Trump won, right?
Same.
So let's go.
I told some the other day, for the first time, I don't expect the worst thing to happen every time.
No kidding. Which is something to say, considering how all of us have been sitting here watching what's going on in the House, all the different trans bills and, all the different things they're trying to pass, and the library thing. It's like, come on, people. But, at the very least, I think if you aren't upset by the Dobbs decision, and if you aren't upset by defunding libraries, you're at least maybe starting to really be personally impacted by gun violence. People are starting to get mad about stuff. And I think that's going to help us. Hopefully that anger turns into some votes for some people that will actually make the changes that we need to make to work on some of these issues. Great. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. It's been great hearing from you. I don't see any other questions. We're going to move on to the regular meeting now. And it's going to be really light. I think really all we have is Pam's announcements. So she's sharing her screen. I'm going to mute myself. But thanks so much for being here.